I've just started recording. Thanks for reminding me. Okay, so for each of these values, you need to create a value set code. This is mandatory to create the value set code. From system point of view, it is not mandatory, but we need to make it mandatory because if we are using some codes for the segments, it has to match exactly with the codes that exist at the finance end. Otherwise, when you transfer the payroll information into the costing information into finance, that time it will not match and it will throw an error at the journal entry end. Similarly, you can configure each of the segments and you can add a value set. Now, all these are, when you run your costing report, all these segments come separated with the delimiter, and for the offset, exactly the same segment comes. So we don't define the offset segment separately. The same cost allocation key flexfield segment can be used for costing as well as for the offset. Do you have any question on this screen? Just let me know. And for the suspense account and default account, we define it only at the payroll level. So suspense account is different and cost account is different. So the costing account can be used at various levels, we will see in a bit, but the suspense account and the default account can be used only in the payroll level or the department level. Now, here I have given a sample key Flexfield structure and value set which we just saw. So this particular example, it is the naming convention is a bit different. The cost allocation key Flexfield consists of 5 segments. It's like company, account, cost center, product, and there could be a project segment. So and for each segment there are value sets, like they have selected a value like 102 for the company, 00251 for the accounts, like that. So value sets are like the list of values which you can pick while creating your cost allocation Flexfield structure for different levels. We will see in a minute what I mean by different levels. Once again, the best practice to create this key Flexfield is to take the Flexfield structure from finance. Now, here I have detailed a bit on what is the different features of this cost allocation key Flexfield. Now, if you are new to the Fusion payroll and costing, all these things may not make a lot of sense, but if you have already implemented Fusion payroll and or EB's payroll, you may be able to understand that the level that we use for the cost allocation key Flexfield is important, because that is the name where exactly the cost goes. So if we go back to the cost allocation key Flexfield, you can see that in this particular system, the segments are named like legal entity, product, cost center, account, intercompany, and 2 for future users. The name that is given to that first segment is generally the company for which the costing happens. Now here they have named it legal entity, but you may name it as company as well. So it's just a difference in the name. So this is called the header, and inside that header you will have multiple rows for each of the costing lines. So each of the costing line refers to the costed amount, like the employee's salary. So if I go back to the report, you will see that there are multiple lines for each of the department. In each department there may be like if you see the C count, that is the column B, in this department there are 12 employees and their total basic sums up to this amount 89516, and the entire amount is costed to this particular costing string. So this is what the payroll engine does. So when we define the basic salary element, we create the cost structure or cost codes for that. When the payroll engine runs, it selects all the people in that particular department and then creates the string and adds up the values. Now I have added this slide just to have a better understanding of what is the segment level, how the row heading happens, and how the column heading happens for the cost allocation key Flexfield, so that you can refer to this later. Now, if you see the matrix on the first column, there is payroll, element, and department. These are the various levels on which you can do the costing. Now, which level to do the costing for what element, that entirely depends on your business decision. Now we'll talk about the costing hierarchy and levels. The costing can happen at various levels and there is a hierarchy. So you need to decide that costing hierarchy you cannot change, but you can select at which level you want to do the costing. Now in this slide on the right hand side, you can see the different levels, and the hierarchy happens from the bottom to the top. So the different level at which you can have the costing is at element entry, person element, then person payroll relationship, position terms assignment, job terms assignment, department terms assignment, element eligibility, and payroll. So these are the various levels at which the costing happens. And it is a top like a bottom up approach. So when the payroll engine runs, it first checks the cost allocation key Flexfield at the element entry level. If it doesn't find it, it goes to the next level. Like that, it reaches the payroll level. Now if it doesn't find anything at any level, it takes whatever value is defined at the payroll level. That is where the suspense account is also defined. So if the payroll engine doesn't find any value at any level, it will cost the entire amount to the suspense account, which is defined as a payroll level. So it is important to do the suspense account, to define the suspense account, so that your costing process doesn't go into error. As well, we need to define the costing at the required level. So the hierarchy starts at the element entry level and ends at the payroll level. Most of the time we do the costing at the element eligibility level, which is the element link. So you have seen in the payroll sessions how the element and the links are created. When you create the link, there is a section to define the costing for the element. So at that point you need to define the costing of the element. So when that element is attached to an employee, for example basic salary, it is attached to an employee, the payroll engine will check what is the costing defined at the element eligibility level. It will pick up those costing segments, and whichever segment it doesn't find, it will look for that in the next level. Now, there is an explanation in this particular slide that why we should define different type of hierarchy at different level. Now, as I said, that it is entirely your client's decision at which level to define what kind of costing. But there is kind of a rule of thumb that which of the accounts are defined at which level. Nipeta, I have started recording the session now. I think we missed the first 15-20 minutes we missed, but I have recorded now. Okay, so the payroll level is the highest level here in the costing hierarchy. you don't define natural accounts or the costing accounts at the payroll level. We use payroll level only for creating the suspense account. Element eligibility, this is for the natural account. By the natural account, we mean that the account that is used for costing of your payments. So basic salary costing, housing allowance costing, this kind of things we define at the element eligibility level, because it is understood that you're actually costing the payments of the elements. If you need to define anything at the department level, that is, we define the cost centers at the department level. So if you are from HR department and I am from IT department, our cost goes to different departments. So I am paid basic salary, you are also paid basic salary, but the cost goes to two different departments. So one of the segments in the accounting cost allocation key Flexfield needs to be department. It is always there. The department Flexfield is all department segment is always there in any client's cost allocation key Flexfield. So the departments are defined as cost centers, and there has to be a code assigned to each of the cost centers, which you create in the list of values for that particular segment. Now, if you want to define job or position in the hierarchy, that is for kind of a requirement where you have the cost based on a particular job or a job category. So you may say that if the person is a manager, then the cost needs to go to a particular account. So you use that job or position segment in your cost allocation key Flexfield, and the cost code that is defined for a job comes in the list of values. Now you can also define the costing at the person level. If you remember the hierarchy, I'll just go back a few slides. Okay. So if you remember this, then the lowest level is element entry, and then there is person element, and then the person payroll relationship. That is actually in the third level. So if the costing process doesn't find anything at the element entry and the person element level, and then it finds everything in the payroll person payroll relationship level, then it will not go any further, and it will take the entire string from the person end. Now the element entry level is where you want to override all other level, because you can understand that element entry level is the first in the hierarchy. So if you define all the segments in that particular level, then the payroll engine won't look for any further level. So it is kind of overriding all other levels. Now there are different business scenarios which actually makes us determine the costing type. Generally, we define the costing at the element eligibility level for the natural accounts. For example, for basic salary payment, we define it at the element eligibility level. But in case of elements like pension, which we don't need to do by department or by element, because the entire company's pension goes to a particular account. So we don't do different for different departments. We do it at the payroll level. Now, before I go into this slide, let's go and see how the cost allocation key Flexfield sits in different levels. So we will see at the element level how it sits, as well we will see the payroll and the person level. If you need to ask any question on the key Flexfield structure, you can ask me now, because I don't think I'll be able to open this Flexfield again, because it takes a lot of time. Now, in order to see the element costing, you need to go to the payroll work area, payroll calculations, and open the element setup. Now, the moment you create cost allocation key Flexfield structure, that becomes available in each of these levels, like the payroll level, the element level, element link level, person level, and position and job level. Okay. So another thing that is important is that which input value to cost for the costing process. Now, all the time we cost the pay value. There could be your business logic to define in the element and for that you need multiple input values. For example, this particular element has got so many input values like pay value, amount, periodicity, hours work, like that. So your pay value could be a multiplication of your hours worked and maybe rate or something else, but it feeds into your pay value. So pay value is the thing that gets costed all the time, because pay value is the input value that holds the money. Now, if you go to the element eligibility, that is the place where you define the costing. So if I go to this element eligibility, you can see there are 3 tabs. The last one is the costing. Now for this particular account, they didn't define the costing. I may have to open another client information. Okay, so even though they did not define, you can see the account details over here. There is cost account, offset account, and the priority accounts, priority cost account. So this was all that we talked about in our discussion so far, that you can define the cost accounts and offset accounts over here. And if you have a priority cost account, like for a particular element, if you don't want it to follow that cost and offset account defined in this 2 sections, you can define a priority cost account. This priority cost account you can define only at the element eligibility level. So if there is a priority cost account, it will not look into the cost and offset account. Now you can see the legal entity, product, cost center, exactly whatever we defined at the cost allocation key Flexfield level will be coming over here. Now what we generally do is we select the legal entity, product, and the cost centers over here. So these are the 3 segments that is important for the natural accounts or creating the string. So if we go back to the report now, we will see that for the basic salary, we have defined 01710001. These are the string that determines the entire journal entry for the cost allocation. So what the costing process does, it starts from the element entry level and looks for each of the segment of the string. Now if it goes to the element entry level and it doesn't find anything, it will go to the next level, that is the person element level, and then it will go to the person level. And if it doesn't find anything, it will go up the hierarchy and then it will go to the element link level. At the element link level, if we define the first 2 accounts or whatever, if we define the entire string, it will take the values from there, and if it gets all the segments, then it will not go any levels up. It will complete the costing string and go to the next element. Now, what happens is the cost center, as I said, the cost center is most of the times the department. So we don't define the cost center at the element link level. We define cost center as at the department level. So there is a task called manage department costing. You can go there and you can define the third segment there. So the organization costing comes before the element link costing. So element link is above the organization. So it will first go to the organization. It will not find any other segment. It will find the third segment. It will pick it up from there, and then it will go to the element link level and fill up the other segments. So you can understand, I mean, how you can decide that which all segment of the cost allocation Flexfield to be filled from which level. If you know the hierarchy, then you can decide that which part of the system you need to populate with the values for each of the segments. Now, there are required and optional segments. Now, if you remember the cost allocation key flex fields, there was an option to make the segments mandatory. So you can keep the segments optional or you can make it mandatory. Now, there could be different consequences for making it mandatory. Let us see what happens that when a segment is optional and what happens if we make the segment mandatory. Now, if you define a segment as optional, it doesn't matter whether you define a suspense account or not. It displays a blank value in the costing string. So if we go back to the report here you can see every segment has a value. Let it be 0, but you need to define 0 in your cost allocation key flex field value sets. So 0 doesn't mean null. So if something is null, then it will be blank. So something is null means either you didn't define a value for the segment or it has not found the value in any of the costing levels. That's why it's showing null. A null is an error, because if there is a null in the string, then you cannot link it with the ledger journal accounting or journal entry. So what happens is, if you have optional, I mean, if each of your segment is optional, then it doesn't really error, but your process gets complete. Now, if it is optional and you don't have a suspense account, then it displays a blank. If you have it optional, but you have a suspense account at the payroll end, then if it doesn't find any value for the segments, it will go to the payroll costing suspense account level and it will pick up the value from there. Now, if it is required, I mean, if all your segments are required and also the suspense account is defined, then if it doesn't find the value of any segment, then it will go to the suspense account and picks up the value. So in that case, your costing process will not error. But if you have it required and if you don't have the suspense account, then you have an error. So you have an error in your costing string. Now in Fusion, you don't run any separate process for generating the costing string. When you run the payroll, it automatically generates the costing string. So this is a difference. I mean, if you have come from EB's background, you know that we used to run a process called costing for generating the costing string, but here we don't have that process anymore. So in case you need to roll back the costing, you need to roll back the payroll itself. Now, as I said, the offset account exists only at the element link level. It doesn't exist in any other level. Similarly, suspense account, it exists only in the payroll level and the department level. Now, you can define the suspense account in any of this payroll or department level, but it is recommended that you define it at the payroll level only, because if you want to define it at department level, then you need to define it for each and every department. Generally, the number of payrolls are much less than the number of department. In one company, we may have only one or two payrolls, but the number of departments are quite huge. Sometimes it may go up to 500 or 600. So better to define the suspense account at the payroll end, not at the department end. I'll just show you how it looks at the payroll end. You have to go to manage payroll definition. And then go to costing. So you can see the suspense account and the default accounts over here. So this suspense and default account is different from the cost account. So I hope you have understand the difference. This cost account is what you define at the cost allocation key Flexfield. So here we were talking about like if the highest level is the payroll level, where it goes, but suspense and default account, the purpose is entirely different. If there is something unaccounted for, like some invalid cost combination for which the debit and the credit doesn't match, then it goes to the suspense account. And if something in the costing which doesn't match 100%, then it goes into the default account. Default account also you can define at payroll end as well as the department end. Now there is something called number of structure instances. When you create the cost allocation key Flexfield, it will ask you to define the structure instances for that. Structure instances are nothing but connecting the cost allocation key Flexfield to a particular legal entity or a legislative data group. So the legislative data groups are generally one-to-one, like in one country you have one legislative data group. So most of the time it's one. So suppose you have 5 legal entities in UAE. Each of them follows the same structure of cost allocation key Flexfield. Then you create only one structure instance for the same. Now I'll go back to the element costing to complete the discussion on the same. Element costing is very much important because that is where your payment costing goes. I mean, whatever you pay to the employee is costed to the and this particular element costing accounts. Now, there are a few points which is important from Oracle's definition, which we need to understand for element costing. Oracle has predefined costing options for the elements. So in some of the countries, if you select the standard earnings or the earnings element, it automatically generates the costing options. Then you have element eligibility records to cost. Element eligibilities are nothing but which we saw just now, that the element links. So if you define your cost accounts at the element eligibility level, you need to create an element eligibility, go to the costing tab and add the values for the accounts. Then you need to define which input values you want to cost. As we saw in this particular basic salary element, there are more than one input values. Now most of the time the input value called pay value is costed. Now if you see the processing rule of the element, you will understand that the different input values are fed by different formula results. So the target input value is pay value here, and the result returned is the L value. So there are formulas behind these elements which calculates the pay value and puts it in the target input value here. So there could be a lot of input values which we use for our internal calculation, the calculation for the element, but when you do costing, you cost only the pay value. So you need to check which particular input value you need to cost. For payments, we cost pay values, but in some cases we cost hours as well. So this is again the client's requirement, like what they want to cost. Definitely we need to cost the pay value because that is for the payments. Sometimes they cost the hours worked as well. And there are different kinds of requirements that leads to different costing of different input values. So we have sometimes like shift workers, the shift credits that they get for working in a different in different shifts, that also is costed sometimes. So if you have that kind of a requirement that you're capturing the shift credits of an employee in the elements, then you may need to cost the shift credit input values. The next one is costing type to select. We will talk about what is meant by costing type. There are various costing types available. There could be costed, fixed costed, and no costed elements available. We will see the definitions in a bit. But here the costing type of this element is costed. Now, there could be elements at the payroll relationship level. Most of the time, the payment elements are not at payroll relationship level. It's at the assignment level. The elements like pension and taxes, these are created at the payroll relationship level because that doesn't change for employee to employee. That is kind of fixed. So the entire company's pension goes into one account. So those kind of elements are defined at the payroll relationship level, and their cost also comes from that level. Offset account segments to complete. What happens in the offset account is, let me just go back to the costing. It's taking too long to open. Let me open another class. Okay, so for this particular element, you can see the costing type is costed. Transfer to general ledger is checked because this element is eligible to be transferred to the finance. The pay value is costed and the unit of measure is money. And this is how the cost account and the offset accounts is defined. So on the cost account number is given here. Rest of the segments are not defined because it will pick it up from the next level. And for offset account, we have defined all the segments. So that means that the offset account will be same for all the employees. So it doesn't need to look into any other level for getting the offset accounts. But the cost account, for the cost account, it will start looking from the bottom level, that is the element entry level, and it will go to each level to get the codes. So I know this particular client setup. Rest of the accounts are defined at the department level to be picked up from. So it will go to the department level before going into the payroll level and get all these accounts. Only GL account number will not be there at the department level. So it will come to the element link level and get the remaining codes. So if I go back to the report, which is actually extracted from this client, so you can see the basic salary is costed to 01710001. 71001 is common for all the employees' basic salary, and 01 is the branch code. The branch code is nothing but the department code, which is defined at the department level. So if you belong to let's say data branch, your code is 01, which is defined for the data branch department. If you belong to Al Maktoum, it is 02. So this is the thing that it is picking for from the department of an employee. I hope this is clear now how the costing process gets the value for the different segments from different levels. We have not defined any priority cost account for this particular element because there was no such requirement. I have not yet done any priority costing for any of the clients. If you are doing the priority costing for any of your clients in the future, keep one thing in mind, that priority cost accounts can only be defined at the element link level. So if you are defining it here at this level for this particular element, you need to define all the codes here, because if it goes into any other level, it will not be able to look for that code. The priority costing is meant only for the element link level. So for doing an element costing, we saw that what all we need to define. We need to consider the input values to cost. We need to define the cost and the offset accounts. And if we need priority account, we also need to define the same. The priority account, you need to define all the segments. Now, I have given certain definitions for, I mean, these are nothing but Oracle terminologies that they give for each of these functionalities, how the predefined costing option works. Oracle has got predefined costing option depending on the element's primary classification. So this particular element, this is of type standard earnings. You can see this basic salary. So when you create the element using this particular classification, it automatically creates the costing type. We saw how we can set up element eligibility record to cost. The cost allocation key Flexfield, it is available for all the eligible levels. One of them is element eligibility. So if your cost allocation key Flexfield structure is defined, it will show up in the element eligibility record, and you need to give the values for the elements that you want to pick up from that level. Input values to cost, we have seen we need to select which input value we want to cost. Most of the time it is the pay value because we cost the money. In some cases it could be the other input values like hours worked or shift credits like that. So again, it depends on the requirement of your client, but whatever you pay you have to cost. So whatever goes into a standard earnings of the employees has to be costed. And additionally, you can cost other things. I'll give you an example. Let's say I had a requirement for this particular client where they used to cost the salary of the people who do not get paid in the payroll. For example, some people's salary are on hold, their payment gets calculated but we don't transfer their net pay to the accounts. In some cases people do not have bank accounts, so we don't have any place to send their salaries, so we hold their salaries temporarily and send the cost to a different account. So in that case we hold the value in an information element or in a balance. So in that case we cost the information element. So it is not a standard earnings element, but as per the as per the client's requirement, we cost the information element. So this is again, very specific to the clients. Now this slide is for understanding the costing types. Now if I go back to the element definition, when you create the costing, you can choose the costing type over here. So here the costing type is costed. In the same list of values, you have all these different costing types. It could be costed, it could be distributed, fixed costed, or not costed. Now for the costed, if we select the costed type as the costing type, then the costing can happen at all the levels. It's eligible to be costed at all levels. Most of the time, all the earnings elements are costed. The examples could be standard earnings, direct payment, supplemental earnings. In UAE, since we don't have any taxes, we don't have the direct payment thing. The standard earnings and direct payments are the same. Now, they could be of costing type as distributed. Distributed is also costed at all the level. Most of the time we do distributed for taxes. Since we don't have taxes in the UAE, we don't use distributed costing type. Then there is fixed costed. The difference between costed and fixed costed is that fixed costed can be costed only at element entry, element eligibility, and payroll level. Fixed costed you cannot do at department level. So most of the time deduction elements like the pensions, voluntary deductions, and pre-tax deductions we do as fixed costed. So in UAE the pension elements we do as fixed costed. Because we don't need the pension elements to be costed differently for different departments. So entire company's pension goes into only one account. So it is defined as fixed costed. For fixed costed, the organization level or the department level is skipped. It goes to element entry, then element eligibility, and then payroll directly. So there's a difference between the costed and the fixed costed. We majorly use these two costing types, and then of course there is a last costing type that is not costed. Some of the element we don't need to cost. For example, information element, we don't need to cost them. So elements that are not affecting your net pay or elements that are not going into your account as monetary payment, you don't need to cost generally. But as I said, there could be some examples where the information elements are cost. That example that I gave, that sometimes we need to hold the net pay because the employee is not eligible for payment. So in that case, we create an information element to hold the balance and send the cost to a different account. So that could be an example of where we are using information element for the payment, but it's costed. Now I'll go back to the previous slide. The fixed costed and distributed costed, these two, if you see the examples, they are very close in the way they work. But the difference between fixed costed and distributed is in the next slide. So fixed costing is if you charge the payroll relationship level entries to a balance sheet, and distributed costing is here the difference comes that in the fixed costed we cannot use the department information, but distributed costing we can use. We have seen how the offset account is defined at the payroll, at the element link level. Now, what is important here to keep in mind is that if you do not have the any of the segments at the offset account level, then it follows exactly the same hierarchy as the cost account. So, for example, for this particular element, we have defined everything for the offset account because this is kind of fixed. If basic salary is in the offset, then the branch code is defaulted to 99. It will not look for the branch code for individual employees. But if you don't define any of this segment, then it will follow the same hierarchy as the costing or the cost allocation key Flexfield to generate the other segments. So it actually picks up the information that happens in the cost account. So the payroll engine first does the cost accounts and then it does the offset accounts. Now, if you're using priority account, as I said, you need to keep in mind that you need to define all the segments at the element link level because the priority account doesn't work for any other level. And another applicability of priority account is that if you want a percentage of your payment to be costed to one account and the remaining amount or remaining percentage to be costed as per the standard process. So you can define that 50% of your payment to be costed in the priority account and the remaining has to be costed by the standard process. Then it will pick up the priority account for 50% and remaining 50% it will pick up the costing and the offset as defined in the element. Okay, now this was all about the costing, the payroll costing. We have a different process called the payment costing. I'll go into that. I don't have a payment costing set up in any of the clients because we have not done it so far. But I will just explain you functionally what it is and I will tell you what all the processes you need to run for making that work. As I said, there is no separate process for costing. When you run the payroll or the quick pay, automatically the cost accounts or the costing information gets created and you can download this kind of a report. Now this is a custom report, but Oracle has got standard report or what we can say transactional business intelligence or OTBI report for costing. So you must have seen in your OTBI sessions that how you can create OTBI reports for the real-time costing or the real-time subject areas. There is a different subject areas for real-time costing. You can go there and use the drag and drop feature to create your costing reports. But most of the time the client's requirements are different. They want to group by certain parameters or certain values. That's the reason we cannot give them OTBI reports, so we need to create custom reports for them. Let me know if you have any questions on this, otherwise I'll move on to the payment costing. Okay, let me show you one more thing. I will show you the department costing, how it looks like. The task that you use for defining the cost allocation key Flexfield at the department level is manage costing of department. Okay. I'm not sure if this will open up because this instance was having an issue for the cost allocation. Okay, fine, it's there. Okay, so here when you define department in the work structure, all the departments will come over here. Now, how will you understand whether the costing exists or not? This will be checked. This costing exists flag will be checked for that particular department. If costing is not defined for that department, this will be blank. So this is one place where you need to check if your costing process goes into error or if your costing process generates null results. So if the first segment is null, then there could be only one reason, that the department has been defined but no costing has been defined for it. We face this issue quite frequently at the client side because they create the department but they don't inform payroll. That is why the costing string doesn't get created for the department. Okay, so open the department. So here you can see that the percentage costing is given and the branch code is given. The GL account number, that is the second segment, is blank because it is picking up from the element link level, and rest of the segments are defined. So when the costing process runs, it gets all these segments from the department level and for the 100%. So if you want to split the cost, you can do it over here. You can do 50 or 60% for one particular GL account number and then the remaining percentage for another GL account number. So the costing process will get all the accounts or all the segments from this level, and for the GL account number it has to go to the element link level. As well, you can define the suspense and the default account here. So we saw that the suspense and default can be created at payroll level or it can be created at department level. But as a best practice, you should define it at the payroll level. Okay, so I'm assuming there's no question on this thing so far. I'll talk about the costing of payments. Now, the costing of payments is entirely for your cash management module. The process name that we need to run for the costing of payment is called the calculate costing of payments. Now, we need to run it 2 times because the purpose of the costing of payment is to reconcile with your bank statement. So first time when we run, then we run it with the flag as payment reconcile as no, because this process this debits the payroll liability account and credits the cash accounts. So crediting the cash account means you're going to pay this amount to the employees. Now next time when you run, that is when you get your bank statements. So that means you have cleared your cash accounts by sending the payments to the employees. Now you run it 2 times, and second time when you run with the payment reconciled as yes, that means you're matching your bank statement with the payment information. So if you see the definition of the process creates entries that debit the payroll liability account and credits the cash clearing accounts. So if you have void payments or null payments or invalid payments, then that shows up in the costing account, this payment reconciled accounts. Now, in the next slide, I have this is kind of a functional overview of what exactly happens between payroll and cash management in terms of this reconciling payroll payments. Now, Oracle Fusion Global Payroll, that is actually the Fusion Payroll, integrates with Oracle Fusion Cash Management. So the purpose of making this payroll and cash management to talk is to reconcile your bank statement. So in some cases, if your reconciliation doesn't happen, then you need to inform that to the payroll manager, because maybe that person doesn't have a bank account, or some void or cancel payment happen if you are using check payments. Now, if you see the particular process flow on the right hand side, it starts from the payroll. The payroll generates payments. Generate payment means you have to run the prepayment at the payroll end, and then it will automatically generate the costing string and the payment information. Now you need to run the calculate costing of payments process, and then you need to transfer the payment information to the cash management. Now at the cash management end, what happens is, after you have done the payment, then you import this bank statements and then reconcile the payments manually or automatically. If you are using Fusion Cash Management, you have the option to load the bank statements back into the Fusion and then run the reconciliation process. Now the journal entries are created for the reconciliation, and then there you can exactly see what you have received from payroll and what has actually been paid by the bank. So whenever you see the mismatch, and even it is unreconciled after 90 days, we give a certain time for the payment, because on the day one it may not be processed completely, so the bank may need some time. So after a certain time, when we actually run the reconciliation or the costing of payment process with the reconcile flag as yes, that time if we see there are still mismatches, we need to inform the payroll manager. So there could be different issues, different reasons for the reconciliation. So at the payroll end, the payroll manager needs to check the employee's HR data and to make sure that what exactly went wrong, and then resubmit the process, the calculate costing of payments process, and then this things gets resolved. So this reconcile payroll payments process happens at the cash management end, but the correction needs to happen at the payroll end. The next slide is about the tasks that we need to process for this payments costing process. Now there are 7 different tasks. All these tasks are specific to cash management reconciliation, not for the payroll. So the first task is submit task to generate payments for employees and the third parties. So it could be the EFT or the generate check payment process that we do at the payroll end. Then we need to submit the calculate costing of payment tasks. So the calculate costings of payment tasks, what it does is it debits the payroll liability account and credits the cash clearing account. And if there is something uncosted or something that didn't match the debit and the credit, it goes into the void or unreconciled payment. Now the next process that we need to run is submit the transfer payments information to cash management task. This is done when you have already sent the payment files to the bank. Now, after the bank has done the payment, you get the statement back from the bank and you load it into the Fusion. There is a load bank statement task which we can use for doing this activity. You do this for checking if the bank statement and the payroll payments have reconciled. You can do the reconciliation manually. If you're using the system, you can do it at the output of this load bank statement process. If you get discrepancies, then you need to inform the payroll manager. Then the payroll manager may or may not need to do some activity at their end. After if it is some issue with the employee's bank account, or if it is some issues with the costing process or the definition of the costing or the costing setup, then that needs to be corrected and they need to run the calculate costing of payments once again. So this completes the entire process, starting from the payroll run, payroll costing, payment costing, as well as reconciliation at the cash management end. So after this costing of payment is complete and the payments are reconciled, you will find that the cash clearing account matches exactly with the payroll payments. So this was all about the costing. So we have spoken about payroll costing as well as payment costing. The payment costing, I could not show you anything in the system because we have not yet configured it for any of the clients. But if you are going to implement it for any client, then you can refer to the slides or the system. This process is entirely seeded and it works accurately because there is nothing, there is no configuration required in this area. Entirely seeded, the processes are also seeded and they work perfectly. Let me know if you have any more question, otherwise I will end the session. You can let me know later, or if you come across any particular requirement which at the client side which is kind of new or which we didn't cover, for which we need a solution, you can definitely let me know over the email, or you can let me know your doubts also over the email. Okay, I got a question. What about transfer to GL process? Yes, there is a process for transfer to GL, but we let me show that. So you need to go to the payment distribution work area and submit a process or a report. Okay, so this is the process transfer to subledger accounting, which you need to run for transferring the costing information from payroll to the general ledger. So it works exactly in the same way, just like any other payroll process will work. You need to give a payroll flow name, end date, payroll name, and the start date. So this will make sure that your journal entries are created at the subledger end. The process name is slightly different from the one that we used to have in EVs, because the Fusion treats the financial and subledger accounting separately, and subledger is the one where we have the journal entries. Okay, so if you have any, I don't have any more questions, I can end today's session. If you have questions, please send me an email. I will try to respond. Thank you so much for attending today's session.